Blood has a smell. Once you have lived through the smell of burning beams, split flesh, and wet earth soaked through with death, it never leaves you. Jin Cheon-woo knew that smell too well. It had followed him through the years after the fall of his family, into the dust of endless battles, into the mouths of men who died with curses on their lips, and now it came for him again, thick and choking, as if the world itself had decided to drag him back into the night when everything was. He could still hear the screams. He could still see his mother lying in the courtyard, her eyes open but empty, her hands stretched toward him as if she had been trying to call him back from a place no one could return from. He could still see his father standing beneath the collapsing roof, one hand pressed to his chest, the other gripping a sword that could no longer keep away the men in black. He could still see the face of Hong Gu-hyun, the old servant who had smiled at him for years, the man everyone trusted, the man who had buried his blade in his mother's heart without hesitation. And then the flames had taken everything. The memory should have ended there. It had ended there once before. It had ended in blood and ash and despair. But this time something strange happened. The darkness broke. Jin Cheon-woo gasped and opened his eyes. For a moment he could not move. His chest rose and fell too quickly. His heartbeat hammered in his skull as if it wanted to tear its way out. He stared into the ceiling above him, unable to understand why there was no smoke, no heat, no smell of charred wood. The air in the room was clean, cool, quiet. He slowly turned his head. A wooden beam, a lacquered screen, a low table with a teacup on it, a bookshelf with neatly arranged volumes. The room was familiar in a way that made his body stiffen. His room, not the burned ruins of his memory, not the cold floor of the battlefield where he had died in the second life he had once lived after the destruction. This was his room inside the Jin family residence in Luoyang, before the fall, before the massacre, before the world had shattered. His fingers trembled as he pushed himself upright. His muscles felt young, not like the body of a man who had survived decades of slaughter and regret, not like the body that had dragged itself through hell. He lifted one hand and stared at it, then at the rest of himself, then at the carved wooden frame of the window. Outside, morning light filtered through the paper lattice. His breathing slowed. No, could not be. He rose from the bed and crossed the room in 3 steps. The mirror at the side of the wall caught his reflection. A young face, smooth skin, sharp eyes full of life and fury. The face of Jin Cheon-woo before ruin claimed him. He stared for a long time, then placed a hand over his mouth. Not because he was afraid he might cry, but because the truth was so impossible that even his body did not know how to respond. He had died. He remembered dying. He remembered being dragged through blood and fire until the world had gone dark. And yet he was here, alive, back before the catastrophe, back before the betrayal, back before the moment when he had been too weak to save anyone. His gaze dropped to the window. The courtyard outside was quiet. Servants moved along the stone paths with breakfast trays. A few guards stood at their posts, their hands on their spears, relaxed in the security of a morning they believed would be ordinary. Ordinary. The word almost made him laugh. He closed his eyes and forced himself to think. If this was a dream, it was too detailed. If it was madness, then the pain in his chest was too real. If it was truly a second chance, then heaven had not given it to him for peace. It had given him time. Time to change what had happened. Time to protect what had once been taken from him. The thought struck him hard enough to steady his breathing. His family was still alive. His mother, his father, the household he had once thought unbreakable. The people who would be murdered if he did nothing. His hands clenched into fists. No, this time would be different. The door opened before he could say anything. "Young master, are you awake?" Jang Chu-hyung entered first, carrying a towel over one shoulder and wearing the kind of expression that made him seem half awake and half ready to complain. Behind him, 2 maids came in with a breakfast tray so large it looked more like a banquet than a meal for one person. Steam rose from the dishes. Rice, soup, braised meat, vegetables, fresh fruit, dumplings, and soup thick enough to make the air smell rich. Jin Cheon-woo almost forgot how to breathe. Jang Chu-hyung looked at the untouched food and grinned. "You don't have an appetite again." "I'm fine." "Then can I eat it?" "No, not even a little." "No." Jang Chu-hyung sighed with exaggerated misery and rubbed his stomach. "I had a tiny breakfast, a very tragic breakfast. It was barely food at all." The maids lowered their eyes and smiled to themselves as they set the dishes on the table. Jin Cheon-woo watched them, then watched Jang Chu-hyung, and something warm and painful moved in his chest. In his previous life, Jang Chu-hyung had died buying him time. This fool, this noisy fool, this loyal brute who never knew when to shut his mouth, had fought until the end with nothing but his fists and his stubborn heart. He was alive now, alive, and if the heavens were merciful enough to let this man stand before him again, then Jin Cheon-woo would not waste the gift. He sat down. Jang Chu-hyung brightened immediately, as if the refusal had been a bluff all along. He leaned forward, waiting. Jin Cheon-woo picked up a spoon and stirred the soup without taking a bite. "Eat." "What? You wanted it." Jang Chu-hyung blinked. "You're giving it to me. I'll eat later. You said that yesterday and left it untouched. Then you can eat yesterday's portion portion too. Jang Chu-hyung stared at him in horror, then barked a laugh and sat down across from him. The maids withdrew, amused, and the room fell quiet except for the sound of chopsticks and spoons. Jin Cheon-woo watched Jang Chu-hyung devour the food with shameless enthusiasm. He tried to match the rhythm of the morning, tried to look like the same careless young master the house remembered, but inside his mind was already running through names, dates, mistakes, and deaths. Who had poisoned him first in the old life? Who had opened the gates from within? Who had brought the enemies into the heart of the Luoyang Jin family? He remembered too much. Too many faces. Too many hidden patterns. Too many people who had smiled while sharpening knives behind their backs. He finished only half a bowl of rice before setting it down. Jang Chu-hyung looked at him suspiciously. You really don't have an appetite. I'm thinking, that sounds dangerous. It usually is. The words came out dryly, but they were true. He rose from the table and walked to the window. The morning sun was bright, and the family residence seemed peaceful from the outside. Servants carried laundry. Guards changed posts. The far halls were already awake. If someone looked at the estate now, they would see wealth, order, and strength. They would not see the rot beneath the surface. But Jin Cheon-woo could see it. In the old life, he had been too late. He had only realized the rot when blades were already at his throat. This time, he would not wait. Jang Chu-hyung. Yeah, come with me. Where? To walk. Jang Chu-hyung blinked. Walk. I feel like going to the marketplace. At this hour? I want to eat street food. Jang Chu-hyung stared as if he had heard something obscene. You? Yes. You eat street food? I'm human. Since when? Jin Cheon-woo ignored him and headed out. Jang Chu-hyung hurried after him, still muttering under his breath, but his tone was already lighter. That was how it had always been. Jang Chu-hyung complained, but he followed. He always followed. The streets of Luoyang were already full of life. Merchants called out their goods. Porters pushed carts down the road. Vendors lifted lids and let steam roll upward in white clouds. The smell of fried dough, broth, and grilled meat mixed with the scent of horses and dust and morning rain that had fallen sometime before dawn. Jin Cheon-woo slowed near a small food stall. Jang Chu-hyung looked toward a more expensive inn down the street and pointed. We could eat there. This is fine, but the other place looks better. Sit. Jang Chu-hyung's shoulders sagged. You're doing this on purpose. Jin Cheon-woo did not answer. He ordered noodles, dumplings, and skewers. Simple food. The kind of food that should have tasted ordinary, but in memory it carried a bitter sweetness because it belonged to a life he had once lost. The first bite brought back another memory. A night after the family collapse, when he had been hungry enough to eat anything, he had once stood on a corner much like this and swallowed hot noodles so fast he burned his tongue. A nameless vendor had laughed at him. He had not known then that this simple food would become something precious in the years to come. He ate slowly now, tasting it as though he were memorizing it. Jang Chu-hyung inhaled his bowl in a few violent gulps, then reached for the skewers. This is good. It's food. It's good food. Then keep eating and stop talking. Jang Chu-hyung laughed. Jin Cheon-woo almost smiled. Almost. But the feeling inside him would not fully soften. Every familiar street felt slightly wrong, as if he were walking through a scene already stained by future blood. Every servant he passed was a potential witness, a future corpse, or a possible traitor. Every guard might someday be loyal or broken. The world had not changed, but he had. That was the difference. After the meal, they visited a tea house, then a gambling den. Jin Cheon-woo did not gamble often in this life, but he knew enough to turn a handful of coins into a much larger pile with only a few moves and a patient eye. Jang Chu-hyung watched in amazement as a single silver coin became 5. When the last bet was settled, Jang Chu-hyung held the coins like a treasure. As expected, when I'm with the young master, impossible things happen. Luck is still luck. Then I'm lucky to know you. You'll lose all of that if you get greedy. I won't, I swear. Jin Cheon-woo looked at him and said nothing. There it was again. That simple trust, that foolish loyalty. The thing that had once made Jang Chu-hyung throw himself into certain death. He would not let that happen again. By the time they returned, the sun had already dropped low enough to cast long shadows over the road. Thick clouds gathered overhead, darkening the sky until the road to the family residence felt empty and cold. The crowds had thinned. The lamps along the road were not yet lit. Jang Chu-hyung rubbed his arms. I hate this part of the day. It feels like something ugly is hiding in the dark. Jin Cheon-woo glanced at him. You're right. Jang Chu-hyung paused. That was not a comforting answer. It wasn't meant to be. Then Jin Cheon-woo felt it. A shift in the air. Small. Almost invisible. He lightly pushed Jang Chu-hyung aside. A split second later, a dagger flew past where his chest had been and struck the trunk of a tree with a sharp, ugly sound. Jang Chu-hyung shouted and jumped back. What was that? Jin Cheon-woo stared at the blade buried in the bark. No panic touched his face. Only cold recognition. So it had already begun. Not the full attack. Not yet. But the first hand had moved. Come out, he said. Nothing. He smiled faintly. If you want to kill me, you're too timid. Or perhaps you're afraid of failing. A low low chuckle answered from the shadows. Then another. Figures stepped forward from the darkness. 1, 5, 10. In the end, there were nearly 20. Black clothes, masks, swords. Their eyes were visible even in the dusk, and those eyes were familiar. Jin Cheon-woo's gaze moved across them one by one. Gam Chong-woon. The masked man's shoulders twitched. Jo Gong-suk. Another flinch. Baek Chai-min. A curse was muttered somewhere in the dark. Ma-hun. One of the men tightened his grip on his sword too hard, and Jin Cheon-woo saw it. He smiled. So it's true. You really did decide to come. A man at the center of the group stepped forward. We bear you no ill will. That's not what your faces say. You must die today. Jang Chu-hyung reached for his weapon. Young master, these bastards. Wait. The command was quiet, but Jang Chu-hyung stopped immediately. Jin Cheon-woo kept his eyes on the masked men. You went to the trouble of wearing masks, but you still stood too close to home. Did you think I wouldn't recognize you? I've seen you since childhood. Silence. The men did not answer. Their silence was the answer. Jin Cheon-woo let the wind touch his face. He knew these people, not from this life, but from the one that had ended in flames. Servants, maids, escorts, men who had lived in the estate for years, men who had been trusted with keys and ledgers and food routes and gate patrols. A web of betrayal hidden beneath borrowed smiles. He had suspected it, but now it was no longer suspicion. It was confirmation. You foolish fools, he said softly. Did you really think I spent the whole day walking around for nothing? The masked men shifted. From behind them came the faint sound of movement, hidden footsteps in the alleys, a signal from people waiting to strike elsewhere. The enemy had not come only to kill him. They had come to begin the collapse from inside. But they had made one fatal mistake. They had not realized that Jin Cheon-woo already knew the future. He slowly lifted his hand. At that signal, the darkness around the road exploded with movement. Figures emerged from the side streets, rooftops, and shadows behind abandoned carts. They wore the emblem of the Luoyang Jin family on their sleeves. Escorts, warriors, men who had been chosen quietly in advance, men who had been told to watch without speaking, men who had been waiting for the moment to close the trap. The masked assassins froze. Jang Chu-hyung's eyes widened. You prepared this? Jin Cheon-woo did not look back. Of course. The family warriors advanced with cold fury. Steel flashed in the dim light. The first clash rang out like a bell struck in the dark. One of the masked men lunged forward, but two escorts crossed their blades and forced him back. Another tried to run, only to be cut off by men pouring in from both sides. Jin Cheon-woo moved only once. He stepped aside from a thrust, caught the attacker's wrist, and drove an elbow into the man's throat. The masked assassin stumbled, gagging. Jin Cheon-woo took the sword from his hand and sent him crashing to the ground with a kick to the knee. He did not waste motion. He did not waste breath. The fight tore open the night around them. Jang Chu-hyung finally laughed, a wild and delighted sound, and charged in with his fists raised. You sons of bitches. The road became a storm of steel, fists, curses, and blood. Jin Cheon-woo stood at the center of it all, moving with a clarity that had once belonged only to the man he became after the family's fall. The poison in his body was not gone, not fully, but it did not matter yet. What mattered was that he could see the shape of the conspiracy now. He could feel the pieces moving. The enemy was inside the walls. The enemy had sent killers to test the gate. The enemy believed the family blind. They were wrong. A masked man stumbled back, clutching a bleeding shoulder. Why are there so many of them? Jin Cheon-woo looked at him and answered calmly. Because this time you came too early. The man's eyes widened. A split second later, the escort behind him struck him down. When the last of the attackers were either bound or dead, the road was littered with broken weapons and groaning bodies. The moon had not yet appeared. The darkness remained thick, but now it no longer felt empty. It felt crowded with the consequences of a battle that had only just begun. Jang Chu-hyung wiped blood from his cheek with the back of his hand and stared at the captives. What now? Now, Jin Cheon-woo said. We go home. He turned first. The family residence was still standing ahead of them, vast and quiet and beautiful in the failing light. But Jin Cheon-woo no longer saw it as a home. He saw a battlefield. He saw hidden corridors, secret entrances, coded messages, poisoned tea, and faces that smiled too easily. He saw the first thread of a much larger net. And in that instant, he understood something with perfect clarity. The people who had entered the family were not random intruders. They had been planted. From the inside, his eyes narrowed. So the enemy was already here. That thought did not frighten him. It made him smile, because this time he had returned before the blade fell. This time, the family would not be slaughtered in silence. This time, the hunters would be hunted. And if the shadows wanted to live inside his house, he would burn every one of them out. The mark on the wall vanished beneath Jin Cheon-woo's sleeve. To anyone else, it would have seemed meaningless. To him, it was proof. The enemy had already infiltrated the Jin family. For 3 days, he watched without acting. He visited servant quarters, warehouses, kitchens, stables, and outer courtyards. He spoke little and listened often. People rarely noticed how much they revealed when they believed nobody was paying attention. Patterns began to emerge. A maid who cleaned one corridor too often. A guard who changed routes without reason. A servant who disappeared for a few minutes every evening. Individually, none of it meant anything. Together, it formed a net hidden inside his family's home. Cheon-woo felt no surprise. In his previous life, he had spent years wondering how the enemy had destroyed the Jin family so completely. Now he was seeing the answer with his own eyes. The enemy had never attacked from outside. They had opened the gates from within. That night, he sat alone in his room. A sheet of paper lay before him. One by one, he wrote down names, then more names, then even more. When he finally put down the brush, over 20 names covered the page. Not all were traitors. Some were messengers. Some were informants. Some merely carried orders without understanding their purpose. But every thread led toward the same hidden hand. Someone was directing them. Someone patient. Someone experienced. Someone who had hidden inside the Jin family for many years. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Jang Chu-hyung entered. "You're working again?" "I'm thinking. Thinking is dangerous." Cheon-woo almost laughed. "Why?" "Because every time you start thinking, someone ends up in trouble." For a moment, neither spoke. Then Cheon-woo asked, "If I told you there were traitors inside the family, would you believe me?" Jang Chu-hyung frowned. "How many?" "More than a few." The large man's expression darkened. "What do you need me to do?" "No questions, no doubts, just trust." Cheon-woo nodded slowly. "Stay close to me. That's easy. And tell nobody what we discuss. Even if someone beats me, especially then." Jang Chu-hyung grinned. "Then nobody will learn anything." The following morning, the first move began. Cheon-woo deliberately spread false information. Only a handful of servants heard it. A shipment of silver would supposedly leave through the eastern gate 2 nights later. The story sounded believable, important enough to report, unimportant enough to avoid suspicion. Then he waited. 2 days later, he received his answer. The message moved exactly as expected. One servant informed another. That servant informed a maid. The maid left a coded mark. The mark reached a courier. The courier carried the information beyond the estate. The chain was complete. Cheon-woo finally smiled. Now he knew where to strike. That night, he met secretly with several loyal guards. Men who had died protecting the family in his previous life. Men whose loyalty he trusted more than gold. No explanations were offered. Only orders. Watch, follow, report. Nothing more. 3 days passed. Reports arrived one after another. Every report confirmed his suspicions. The hidden network was larger than expected. Yet the discovery that disturbed him most came from an elderly guard. "Young master," the man said quietly, "the trail always ends at the same place." "Where?" "The old servant residences." Cheon-woo's gaze sharpened. The old servant residences. A place few people paid attention to. A place occupied by long-time retainers. Trusted people. People nobody questioned. His heartbeat slowed. The closer he approached the truth, the calmer he became. By the 7th day, he finally saw the figure himself. An elderly servant walking through the moonlit courtyard. Ordinary, respectable, trusted. Hong Gu-hyun. The man's face appeared unchanged from memory. Yet the sight of him awakened a storm inside Cheon-woo. He remembered his mother's blood. He remembered the burning estate. He remembered years of regret. For a moment, he wanted to draw his sword and kill him immediately. Only years of discipline stopped him. Not yet. A dead traitor could reveal nothing. A living one could destroy an entire network. Cheon-woo followed him from a distance. Hong Gu-hyun entered an abandoned storage building. Several minutes later, another figure arrived. Then another. One by one, shadows gathered. The final proof. The heart of the conspiracy. Cheon-woo withdrew silently. The trap was ready. The next evening, he called a meeting. Not a public meeting. Only trusted guards. Only people whose loyalty had already been tested. The orders were simple. Surround the building. Allow nobody to escape. Capture everyone alive if possible. Kill them if necessary. The operation began after midnight. Rain fell lightly across the estate. Thunder rolled in the distance. Perfect weather for betrayal. Perfect weather for justice. The guards moved into position. Silent, disciplined, waiting. Inside the storage building, lights flickered. Voices could be heard. A dozen conspirators had gathered. They believed themselves invisible. They believed the future belonged to them. They were wrong. Cheon-woo raised one hand, then lowered it. The doors exploded inward. Guards flooded the building. Shouts erupted instantly. Steel flashed. Men reached for hidden weapons. Several attempted escape. None succeeded. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. When it ended, bodies covered the floor. The survivors knelt with bound hands. Fear filled their eyes. For the first time, they realized they had been discovered. Hong Gu-hyun remained standing. Even surrounded, he showed remarkable composure. His old eyes met Cheon-woo's. For several moments, neither spoke. Then the old servant smiled. "So you finally noticed." The words confirmed everything. No denial. smile, no excuses, only acceptance. A strange silence settled over the room. The loyal guards looked stunned. Some could barely believe what they were seeing. 4 decades Hong Guhyun had served the family. For decades he had earned their trust. Now the truth stood exposed. Cheon-woo stepped forward. How long? Hong Guhyun chuckled. Long enough. Who do you serve? The old man remained silent. Cheon-woo was not disappointed. He had expected that answer. Men like Hong Guhyun did not betray easily, not even when captured. Yet it no longer mattered. The network had been exposed. The hidden knives had been removed. The first battle was over. One by one, the prisoners were taken away. Only Hong Guhyun remained. As dawn approached, pale light entered through broken windows. The old servant looked strangely calm, almost relieved. You changed, he said quietly. Cheon-woo looked at him without expression. Perhaps. Hong Guhyun studied him for a moment. Then he laughed, a low, tired laugh. Whatever happened to you, young master? It ruined all our plans. For the first time, genuine satisfaction touched Cheon-woo's heart. Good. Let them suffer confusion. Let them fear the unknown. This was only the beginning. Far beyond the estate, hidden enemies still waited. Shadow Kill Squad still existed. The people responsible for his family's destruction still breathed. But now the path toward them had finally opened. Cheon-woo turned away. Behind him, the traitors were dragged into the light. Ahead of him waited war, and this time he intended to win. The news spread quietly through Luoyang. Officially, nothing had happened inside the Jin family estate. Merchants continued their business. Caravans entered and departed. Servants worked as usual. Yet beneath the calm surface, preparations had begun. Jin Cheon-woo no longer spent his days searching for traitors. The first nest had been destroyed. Now he faced a larger threat. Unit 10. The name had followed him through 2 lives. In his previous life, their arrival had marked the beginning of the end. They had not marched openly. They had entered the city one by one, hiding among merchants, travelers, guards, and laborers. By the time anyone noticed them, the trap had already closed. This time would be different. Every morning before sunrise, Cheon-woo met with trusted guards and reviewed reports. Every afternoon he inspected warehouses, walls, and gates. Every evening he studied maps until the candles burned low. The city itself would become his battlefield. The first challenge was manpower. The Jin family possessed many guards, but not enough loyal fighters to face a hidden enemy operating across an entire city. Cheon-woo therefore began recruiting veterans, wandering martial artists, and former caravan escorts. Some came for money, some came for prestige. A few came because they believed in the Jin family. Cheon-woo accepted all of them. Strength was strength. At the same time, he divided them into small groups. No one knew the full plan. Only a handful of trusted people understood the scale of the coming conflict. When Jang Chu-hyung learned how many recruits had arrived, he scratched his head. Are we preparing for a war? Yes. With whom? You will find out soon. The large man frowned. That sounds troublesome. It will be. For the next several weeks, Luoyang slowly changed. Storehouses were reinforced. Supplies were hidden. Secret routes were mapped. Messengers traveled constantly. To outsiders, everything looked like routine business. To Cheon-woo, it looked like survival. One evening, a report finally arrived. The first member of Unit 10 had entered the city. Cheon-woo read the message twice, then a third time. His expression remained calm. Inside, however, old memories stirred. Burning buildings, dead family members, blood on stone floors. The future was approaching. He folded the report. Begin Phase 1. Orders spread throughout the city before midnight. Watchers were deployed. Suspicious travelers were tracked. Safe houses were monitored. For several days, nothing happened. Then another report arrived, and another. The number of infiltrators increased. Just as he remembered, Unit 10 was assembling, like pieces of a blade slowly being forged. Yet this time they were assembling beneath his gaze. The enemy believed themselves hidden. That illusion pleased him. One night, a courier was captured while attempting to leave the city. The man carried coded instructions. Most people could not read them. Cheon-woo could. Years of hunting Shadow Kill Squad had taught him their methods. The message confirmed his fears. The attack was not months away. It was weeks away. The pace of preparation accelerated. Training grounds remained active late into the night. Weapons were distributed. Emergency plans were rehearsed repeatedly. Even Yu Hyan, usually calm and composed, began to realize the seriousness of the situation. Young master, he said one evening, are we truly facing such a dangerous enemy? Cheon-woo looked toward the city walls. Yes. Can we win? A long silence followed. Finally he answered, we must. Failure was not an option. He had already witnessed what failure looked like. Several days later, the first direct clash occurred. A patrol reported suspicious activity near a warehouse district. Cheon-woo personally led the response. The fight was brief, fast, brutal. 3 enemy operatives were killed. 1 escaped. For most of the guards, it seemed like a minor incident. Cheon-woo knew better. Unit 10 had begun testing defenses. defenses. The war had started. After the battle, he stood alone beside the bodies. They wore ordinary clothing. Nothing distinguished them from common travelers. That was the true danger. Anyone could be an enemy. Any smile could hide a knife. Any conversation could conceal a trap. The following week brought more violence. 2 ambushes, poisoned messenger, an attempted assassination. Every attack failed, yet each success came with a price. Several loyal guards died. Men who should have lived. Men who had families waiting at home. Cheon-woo attended every funeral. He memorized every name. The burden of command grew heavier, but he did not waver. Not anymore. The enemy had stolen enough from him. As summer approached, the tension across Luoyang became impossible to ignore. Rumors spread. Merchants whispered. Travelers altered routes. People sensed something was coming. They simply did not know what. One stormy night, another message arrived. This one contained information Cheon-woo had been waiting for. The main force of Unit 10 had entered Luoyang. Not scouts, not messengers. The real enemy. For several moments he stared at the report. Then he smiled. A cold smile. The kind that frightened even experienced warriors. Jang Chu-hyung saw it and immediately took a step back. Whenever you smile like that, someone suffers. Good. Good for whom? For us. The giant warrior sighed. That answer worries me. Cheon-woo folded the report. The time for preparation was ending. The time for battle was beginning. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. Inside, dozens of oil lamps illuminated maps covering an entire wall. Red marks indicated enemy sightings. Black marks indicated loyal forces. The city had become a giant board. Every piece was moving. Every decision mattered. Cheon-woo studied the map until dawn. At sunrise, he finally placed a finger on one location. An abandoned compound near the northern district. The enemy gathering point. The heart of their operation. At last, he had found it. His eyes narrowed. Unit 10 believed they had entered Luoyang unnoticed. They believed the Jin family remained blind. They believed victory was inevitable. Soon they would learn otherwise. Soon the hunters would discover they had become the hunted. The news spread quietly through Luoyang. Officially, nothing had happened inside the Jin family estate. Merchants continued their business. Caravans entered and departed. Servants worked as usual. Yet beneath the calm surface, preparations had begun. Jin Cheon-woo no longer spent his days searching for traitors. The first nest had been destroyed. Now he faced a larger threat. Unit 10. The name had followed him through 2 lives. In his previous life, their arrival had marked the beginning of the end. They had not marched openly. They had entered the city one by one, hiding among merchants, travelers, guards, and laborers. By the time anyone noticed them, the trap had already closed. This time would be different. Every morning before sunrise, Cheon-woo met with trusted guards and reviewed reports. Every afternoon he inspected warehouses, walls, and gates. Every evening he studied maps until the candles burned low. The city itself would become his battlefield. The first challenge was manpower. The Jin family possessed many guards, but not enough loyal fighters to face a hidden enemy operating across an entire city. Cheon-woo therefore began recruiting veterans, wandering martial artists, and former caravan escorts. Some came for money. Some came for prestige. A few came because they believed in the Jin family. Cheon-woo accepted all of them. Strength was strength. At the same time, he divided them into small groups. No one knew the full plan. Only a handful of trusted people understood the scale of the coming conflict. When Jang Chu-hyung learned how many recruits had arrived, he scratched his head. Are we preparing for a war? Yes. With whom? You will find out soon. The large man frowned. That sounds troublesome. It will be. For the next several weeks, Luoyang slowly changed. Storehouses were reinforced. Supplies were hidden. Secret routes were mapped. Messengers traveled constantly. To outsiders, everything looked like routine business. To Cheon-woo, it looked like survival. One evening, a report finally arrived. The first member of Unit 10 had entered the city. Cheon-woo read the message twice, then a third time. His expression remained calm. Inside, however, old memories stirred. Burning buildings, dead family members, blood on stone floors. The future was approaching. He folded the report. Begin Phase 1. Orders spread throughout the city before midnight. Watchers were deployed. Suspicious travelers were tracked. Safe houses were monitored. For several days, nothing happened. Then another report arrived, and another. The number of infiltrators increased. Just as he remembered, Unit 10 was assembling, like pieces of a blade slowly being forged. Yet this time they were assembling beneath his gaze. The enemy believed themselves hidden. That illusion pleased him. One night, a courier was captured while attempting to leave the city. The man carried coded instructions. Most people could not read them. Cheon-woo could. Years of hunting Shadow Kill Squad had taught him their methods. The message confirmed his fears. The attack was not months away. It was weeks away. The pace of preparation accelerated. Training grounds remained active late into the night. Weapons were distributed. Emergency Emergency plans were rehearsed repeatedly. Even Yu Haiyan, usually calm and composed, began to realize the seriousness of the situation. "Young master," he said one evening, "are we truly facing such a dangerous enemy?" Wu looked toward the city walls. "Yes. Can we win?" A long silence followed. Finally he answered, "We must." Failure was not an option. He had already witnessed what failure looked like. Several days later, the first direct clash occurred. A patrol reported suspicious activity near a warehouse district. Wu personally led the response. The fight was brief, fast, brutal. 3 enemy operatives were killed. 1 escaped. For most of the guards, it seemed like a minor incident. Wu knew better. Unit 10 had begun testing defenses. The war had started. After the battle, he stood alone beside the bodies. They wore ordinary clothing. Nothing distinguished them from common travelers. That was the true danger. Anyone could be an enemy. Any smile could hide a knife. Any conversation could conceal a trap. The following week brought more violence. 2 ambushes, poisoned messenger, an attempted assassination. Every attack failed. Yet each success came with a price. Several loyal guards died. Men who should have lived. Men who had families waiting at home. Wu attended every funeral. He memorized every name. The burden of command grew heavier, but he did not waver. Not anymore. The enemy had stolen enough from him. As summer approached, the tension across Luoyang became impossible to ignore. Rumors spread. Merchants whispered. Travelers altered routes. People sensed something was coming. They simply did not know what. One stormy night, another message arrived. This one contained information Wu had been waiting for. The main force of Unit 10 had entered Luoyang. Not scouts, not messengers. The real enemy. For several moments he stared at the report. Then he smiled. A cold smile. The kind that frightened even experienced warriors. Zhang Chuhyang saw it and immediately took a step back. "Whenever you smile like that, someone suffers." "Good. Good for whom?" "For us." The giant warrior sighed. "That answer worries me." Wu folded the report. The time for preparation was ending. The time for battle was beginning. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. Inside, dozens of oil lamps illuminated maps covering an entire wall. Red marks indicated enemy sightings. Black marks indicated loyal forces. The city had become a giant board. Every piece was moving. Every decision mattered. Wu studied the map until dawn. At sunrise, he finally placed a finger on one location. An abandoned compound near the northern district. The enemy gathering point. The heart of their operation. At last, he had found it. His eyes narrowed. Unit 10 believed they had entered Luoyang unnoticed. They believed the Jin family remained blind. They believed victory was inevitable. Soon they would learn otherwise. Soon the hunters would discover they had become the hunted. The news spread quietly through Luoyang. Officially, nothing had happened inside the Jin family estate. Merchants continued their business. Caravans entered and departed. Servants worked as usual. Yet beneath the calm surface, preparations had begun. Jin Wu no longer spent his days searching for traitors. The first nest had been destroyed. Now he faced a larger threat. Unit 10. The name had followed him through 2 lives. In his previous life, their arrival had marked the beginning of the end. They had not marched openly. They had entered the city one by one, hiding among merchants, travelers, guards, and laborers. By the time anyone noticed them, the trap had already closed. This time would be different. Every morning before sunrise, Wu met with trusted guards and reviewed reports. Every afternoon he inspected warehouses, walls, and gates. Every evening he studied maps until the candles burned low. The city itself would become his battlefield. The first challenge was manpower. The Jin family possessed many guards, but not enough loyal fighters to face a hidden enemy operating across an entire city. Wu therefore began recruiting veterans, wandering martial artists, and former caravan escorts. Some came for money. Some came for prestige. A few came because they believed in the Jin family. Wu accepted all of them. Strength was strength. At the same time, he divided them into small groups. No one knew the full plan. Only a handful of trusted people understood the scale of the coming conflict. When Zhang Chuhyang learned how many recruits had arrived, he scratched his head. "Are we preparing for a war?" "Yes." "With whom?" "You will find out soon." The large man frowned. "That sounds troublesome." "It will be." For the next several weeks, Luoyang slowly changed. Storehouses were reinforced. Supplies were hidden. Secret routes were mapped. Messengers traveled constantly. To outsiders, everything looked like routine business. To Wu, it looked like survival. One evening, a report finally arrived. The first member of Unit 10 had entered the city. Wu read the message twice, then a third time. His expression remained calm. Inside, however, old memories stirred. Burning buildings, dead family members, blood on stone floors. The future was approaching. He folded the report. Begin Phase 1. Orders spread throughout the city before midnight. Watchers were deployed. Suspicious travelers were tracked. Safe houses were were monitored. For several days nothing happened. Then another report arrived, and another. The number of infiltrators increased. Just as he remembered, Unit 10 was assembling, like pieces of a blade slowly being forged. Yet this time they were assembling beneath his gaze. The enemy believed themselves hidden. That illusion pleased him. One night a courier was captured while attempting to leave the city. The man carried coded instructions. Most people could not read them. Cheon-woo could. Years of hunting Shadow Kill Squad had taught him their methods. The message confirmed his fears. The attack was not months away. It was weeks away. The pace of preparation accelerated. Training grounds remained active late into the night. Weapons were distributed. Emergency plans were rehearsed repeatedly. Even Yu Hyan, usually calm and composed, began to realize the seriousness of the situation. "Young master," he said one evening, "are we truly facing such a dangerous enemy?" Cheon-woo looked toward the city walls. "Yes. Can we win?" A long silence followed. Finally he answered, "We must." Failure was not an option. He had already witnessed what failure looked like. Several days later, the first direct clash occurred. A patrol reported suspicious activity near a warehouse district. Cheon-woo personally led the response. The fight was brief, fast, brutal. 3 enemy operatives were killed. 1 escaped. For most of the guards, it seemed like a minor incident. Cheon-woo knew better. Unit 10 had begun testing defenses. The war had started. After the battle, he stood alone beside the bodies. They wore ordinary clothing. Nothing distinguished them from common travelers. That was the true danger. Anyone could be an enemy. Any smile could hide a knife. Any conversation could conceal a trap. The following week brought more violence. 2 ambushes, poisoned messenger, an attempted assassination. Every attack failed. Yet each success came with a price. Several loyal guards died. Men who should have lived. Men who had families waiting at home. Cheon-woo attended every funeral. He memorized every name. The burden of command grew heavier, but he did not waver. Not anymore. The enemy had stolen enough from him. As summer approached, the tension across Luoyang became impossible to ignore. Rumors spread. Merchants whispered. Travelers altered routes. People sensed something was coming. They simply did not know what. One stormy night, another message arrived. This one contained information Cheon-woo had been waiting for. The main force of Unit 10 had entered Luoyang. Not scouts, not messengers. The real enemy. For several moments he stared at the report. Then he smiled. A cold smile. The kind that frightened even experienced warriors. Jang Chu-hyung saw it and immediately took a step back. Whenever you smile like that, someone suffers. Good. Good for whom? For us. The giant warrior sighed. That answer worries me. Cheon-woo folded the report. The time for preparation was ending. The time for battle was beginning. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. Inside, dozens of oil lamps illuminated maps covering an entire wall. Red marks indicated enemy sightings. Black marks indicated loyal forces. The city had become a giant board. Every piece was moving. Every decision mattered. Cheon-woo studied the map until dawn. At sunrise, he finally placed a finger on one location. An abandoned compound near the northern district. The enemy gathering point. The heart of their operation. At last, he had found it. His eyes narrowed. Unit 10 believed they had entered Luoyang unnoticed. They believed the Jin family remained blind. They believed victory was inevitable. Soon they would learn otherwise. Soon the hunters would discover they had become the hunted. The news spread quietly through Luoyang. Officially, nothing had happened inside the Jin family estate. Merchants continued their business. Caravans entered and departed. Servants worked as usual. Yet beneath the calm surface, preparations had begun. Jin Cheon-woo no longer spent his days searching for traitors. The first nest had been destroyed. Now he faced a larger threat. Unit 10. The name had followed him through 2 lives. In his previous life, their arrival had marked the beginning of the end. They had not marched openly. They had entered the city one by one, hiding among merchants, travelers, guards, and laborers. By the time anyone noticed them, the trap had already closed. This time would be different. Every morning before sunrise, Cheon-woo met with trusted guards and reviewed reports. Every afternoon he inspected warehouses, walls, and gates. Every evening he studied maps until the candles burned low. The city itself would become his battlefield. The first challenge was manpower. The Jin family possessed many guards, but not enough loyal fighters to face a hidden enemy operating across an entire city. Cheon-woo therefore began recruiting veterans, wandering martial artists, and former caravan escorts. Some came for money. Some came for prestige. A few came because they believed in the Jin family. Cheon-woo accepted all of them. Strength was strength. At the same time, he divided them into small groups. No one knew the full plan. Only a handful of trusted people understood the scale of the coming conflict. When Jang Chu-hyung learned how many recruits had arrived, he scratched his head. Are we preparing for a war? Yes. With whom? You will find out soon. The large man frowned. That sounds sounds troublesome. It will be. For the next several weeks, Luoyang slowly changed. Storehouses were reinforced. Supplies were hidden. Secret routes were mapped. Messengers traveled constantly. To outsiders, everything looked like routine business. To Cheonwoo, it looked like survival. One evening, a report finally arrived. The first member of Unit 10 had entered the city. Cheonwoo read the message twice, then a third time. His expression remained calm. Inside, however, old memories stirred. Burning buildings, dead family members, blood on stone floors. The future was approaching. He folded the report. Begin Phase 1. Orders spread throughout the city before midnight. Watchers were deployed. Suspicious travelers were tracked. Safe houses were monitored. For several days, nothing happened. Then another report arrived, and another, and another. The number of infiltrators increased. Just as he remembered, Unit 10 was assembling, like pieces of a blade slowly being forged. Yet this time they were assembling beneath his gaze. The enemy believed themselves hidden. That illusion pleased him. One night, a courier was captured while attempting to leave the city. The man carried coded instructions. Most people could not read them. Cheonwoo could. Years of hunting Shadow Kill Squad had taught him their methods. The message confirmed his fears. The attack was not months away. It was weeks away. The pace of preparation accelerated. Training grounds remained active late into the night. Weapons were distributed. Emergency plans were rehearsed repeatedly. Even Yu Haiyan, usually calm and composed, began to realize the seriousness of the situation. "Young master," he said one evening, "are we truly facing such a dangerous enemy?" Cheonwoo looked toward the city walls. "Yes. Can we win?" A long silence followed. Finally he answered, "We must." Failure was not an option. He had already witnessed what failure looked like. Several days later, the first direct clash occurred. A patrol reported suspicious activity near a warehouse district. Cheonwoo personally led the response. The fight was brief, fast, brutal. 3 enemy operatives were killed. One escaped. For most of the guards, it seemed like a minor incident. Cheonwoo knew better. Unit 10 had begun testing defenses. The war had started. After the battle, he stood alone beside the bodies. They wore ordinary clothing. Nothing distinguished them from common travelers. That was the true danger. Anyone could be an enemy. Any smile could hide a knife. Any conversation could conceal a trap. The following week brought more violence. 2 ambushes, poisoned messenger, an attempted assassination. Every attack failed. Yet each success came with a price. Several loyal guards died. Men who should have lived. Men who had families waiting at home. Cheonwoo attended every funeral. He memorized every name. The burden of command grew heavier. But he did not waver. Not anymore. The enemy had stolen enough from him. As summer approached, the tension across Luoyang became impossible to ignore. Rumors spread. Merchants whispered. Travelers altered routes. People sensed something was coming. They simply did not know what. One stormy night, another message arrived. This one contained information Cheonwoo had been waiting for. The main force of Unit 10 had entered Luoyang. Not scouts, not messengers. The real enemy. For several moments he stared at the report. Then he smiled. A cold smile. The kind that frightened even experienced warriors. Jang Chuhyung saw it and immediately took a step back. Whenever you smile like that, someone suffers. Good. Good for whom? For us. The giant warrior sighed. That answer worries me. Cheonwoo folded the report. The time for preparation was ending. The time for battle was beginning. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. Inside, dozens of oil lamps illuminated maps covering an entire wall. Red marks indicated enemy sightings. Black marks indicated loyal forces. The city had become a giant board. Every piece was moving. Every decision mattered. Cheonwoo studied the map until dawn. At sunrise, he finally placed a finger on one location. An abandoned compound near the northern district. The enemy gathering point. The heart of their operation. At last, he had found it. His eyes narrowed. Unit 10 believed they had entered Luoyang unnoticed. They believed the Jin family remained blind. They believed victory was inevitable. Soon they would learn otherwise. Soon the hunters would discover they had become the hunted. The first death happened before sunrise. A sentry on the north wall saw a merchant cart approaching the gate. The driver waved lazily, shouted an ordinary complaint about the cold, and smiled at the guards as if he had done this route 100 times before. Nothing about him looked dangerous. Nothing about the cart looked suspicious. That was precisely why the arrow struck his throat before he could finish speaking. The cart burst open. 2 men climbed out of the false floor. Another 4 dropped from beneath the sacks of grain. Hidden blades flashed in the dim light. The guards had only a second to understand what they were seeing before blood sprayed across the gate. The signal bell rang across the northern district. Jin Cheonwoo was already awake. He had slept in his clothes. That alone told Jang Chuhyung everything he needed to know. Again, the big man muttered as he shoved open the door. Cheonwoo was already fastening his belt. The north gate. Jang Chuhyung cursed and reached for his weapon. "You really really make war sound ordinary. It is ordinary, Cheonwoo said. They're just late. By the time they reached the gatehouse, the first wave of enemy fighters was already inside the outer district. The street was chaos. Merchants were running. Lanterns were falling. Guards were shouting orders in voices that could not be heard over the sound of steel. And beneath the noise, Cheonwoo heard something else. The pattern, the rhythm of the attack. Not wild, not desperate, disciplined. Unit 10. He had heard those steps before in another life. A spear thrust came from the left. He turned his shoulder, let the blade pass, and answered with a cut that opened the attacker's face from cheek to jaw. Another enemy rushed in from behind. Jang Chu-hyung intercepted him with a punch that shattered the man's ribs and sent him crashing through a wooden stall. Stay close, Cheonwoo shouted. You think I'm going anywhere without you? Jang Chu-hyung barked back. 3 more enemies emerged from the smoke. Cheonwoo's eyes sharpened. One of them moved too smoothly, too economically. His footing was not that of a hired killer. It was trained, refined. A man who had spent years learning how to kill in silence. A member of Unit 10. Cheonwoo rushed forward first. The man drew a short blade from his sleeve, but Cheonwoo had already read the motion. He slipped inside the cut, drove his shoulder into the man's chest, and slammed the hilt of his sword into his throat. The assassin collapsed gasping. Capture him, Cheonwoo ordered. But before the guards could reach him, the assassin bit down on something hidden in his mouth. His body convulsed. Then he went still. Poison. Cheonwoo stared at the corpse with cold eyes. Even now they were willing to die for secrecy. The attack spread outward through the district. Fire arrows landed in warehouses. Hidden agents cut loose horses. 2 storehouses began to burn. By the time the sun lifted above the rooftops, the northern quarter looked like a battlefield, not a city street. Yuhayan arrived with reinforcements and immediately began assigning squads. His face was pale, but his voice was steady. Seal the lanes. No one enters or exits without inspection. Search every roof. Take the wounded to the eastern courtyard. Cheonwoo did not interrupt him. He only watched the streets and listened. The enemy was testing them, probing for weak points, searching for panic. He would not give them any. At midday, the second strike came. This one was quieter. 3 men dressed as laborers entered the central grain warehouse under the cover of routine delivery work. They killed the clerk at the counter and opened a hidden panel in the floor. Beneath the warehouse lay a tunnel that connected to the old drainage system. The moment Cheonwoo was informed, he understood the enemy's objective. They were not merely attacking. They were infiltrating the city from beneath. He personally descended into the tunnel with 5 trusted guards and Jang Chu-hyung behind him. The air below was damp, stale, and reeked of mold. Torchlight flickered against the stone walls. The narrow passage twisted in 2 directions, and on the floor lay the fresh footprints of men who had only just passed through. Split? Jang Chu-hyung asked. No, Cheonwoo pointed ahead. They want us to hesitate, and so he walked straight through the center. 2 enemies came at him from a side passage. He cut the first down before the man could raise his arm. The second tried to flee deeper into the tunnel, but Jang Chu-hyung sprinted after him like a charging beast and smashed him against the wall with both hands. Bones cracked. The man slid down without a sound. They found the hidden chamber 15 steps later. Inside were maps of Luoyang, routes, guard rotations, supply schedules, names, so many names. Yu Hyan's expression tightened when he saw them. They've been collecting this for weeks. Longer, Cheonwoo said. He saw another sheet beneath the others. A list of families, merchants, innkeepers, minor officials, people who had already been bought, blackmailed, or replaced. The scale of the operation was larger than even he had expected. The enemy had prepared patiently, but patience could only carry them so far. The hidden chamber was burned before dawn. 2 days later, the real trap began. Cheonwoo spread false information through a chain of trusted intermediaries. The message was simple. The Jin family would move a secret convoy through the western road before midnight, carrying documents and silver. Only a small escort would be present. It was a lie, but it was a believable lie. Unit 10 took the bait. At the appointed hour, a convoy moved through the western road. The enemies struck from the rooftops, from alleys, from behind shuttered doors. Swords flashed in the moonlight. Horses screamed. The first wagon exploded when a hidden fire talisman ignited the oil inside it. Then Cheonwoo gave the signal. The wagons broke open. Not silver, not documents. Armed guards, bowmen on the roofs, iron chains hidden in the wheels. The street turned into a cage. Unit 10 realized the ambush too late. Cheonwoo stepped into the center of the road and met the leader of the assault. The man wore no mask. His face was pale and sharp, like a blade carved from frost. He looked younger than Cheonwoo expected, but the calm in his eyes was wrong. It was the calm of someone who had killed too many people to be moved by blood. You are Jin Cheonwoo, the man said. Cheonwoo answered with his sword half-drawn. And you're here to die. The man smiled slightly. You know our methods better than most. I know enough. The fight began immediately. The leader's blade was fast, but not reckless. Every strike aimed for a vital point. Every retreat invited pursuit. Every pause was designed to lure the opponent into a mistake. In another life, this man would have been nearly impossible to defeat. But Cheonwoo had already fought men like him. He had died among men like him. He knew how they breathed before they killed. He knew the exact instant they shifted weight from rear foot to front. He knew the tiny pause in the shoulders before the wrist struck. He read the pattern and moved ahead of it. Steel rang in the night. Sparks scattered across the stones. Twice the leader tried to break Cheonwoo's guard. Twice he failed. Then Jang Chuhyung crashed into the flank of the enemy formation and sent 2 assassins flying with one sweeping blow. "Did you miss me?" he roared. No one answered. They were too busy dying. The Western Road battle ended just before dawn. When the smoke cleared, the Jin family had won. But the price was high. 3 guards dead, 16 wounded, 1 warehouse burned to the ground. And yet Cheonwoo did not feel relief, because this was only the beginning. The next night he learned why. The captured infiltrator finally spoke. Not willingly, not in full, but enough. Unit 10 had not entered Luoyang alone. Someone inside the city had provided them with lodging, supplies, and schedules. Someone had helped them avoid patrols. Someone had been preparing the city from the inside for months. Cheonwoo's expression did not change when he heard it, but his fingers tightened around the edge of the table. "Who?" Yuhayan asked. The prisoner laughed weakly through broken teeth. "You still think this is only about one family?" Before anyone could stop him, he bit down on poison hidden in his gums and died. Again silence. Again the same answer. The enemy preferred death to confession. Cheonwoo rose from his seat. "Gather everyone." That evening, the whole estate went still. Lanterns were lit across the courtyards. Guards formed a ring around the main hall. The air itself felt tense, as if even the wind knew something terrible was approaching. Cheonwoo stood before the gathered warriors and servants, his blood-stained sword hanging at his side. "Unit 10 is here," he said. "They have killed our people. They have entered our city. They believe we are already half dead." No one spoke. "Tonight," he continued, "we show them what it means to fight inside the Jin family." The answer came as one voice. "Understood." The final assault began under a moonless sky. Enemy agents attacked from 3 directions at once. One group targeted the gates. One moved toward the rear storehouses. Another attempted to create chaos in the servant quarters, hoping to break morale and force the guards to split. It would have worked against an ordinary family, but Cheonwoo had already prepared for this night. Hidden fire pits ignited on command. Iron bars dropped from the roofs. Crossbow fire cut down the first wave. Jang Chuhyung led a charge through the center and crushed a squad of assassins with raw force. Yuhayan coordinated the evacuation of civilians and kept the wounded from being trampled. Loyal guards moved like a single body, cutting off every route the enemy tried to use. Cheonwoo himself went straight for the center. He had seen the pattern. The real command point was not the largest force. It was the quietest one. He broke through 2 lines of enemies and entered a side corridor lined with lanterns. There, in the shadow of the inner wall, stood the true controller of the night's attack, a middle-aged man with a scar beneath one eye. The man's expression changed when he saw Cheonwoo. Not fear, recognition. "So the rumors were true," the man said. "You really remember more than you should." Cheonwoo raised his sword. "You were there in my previous life." The man did not answer. Cheonwoo's voice became colder. "You were one of the hands that destroyed my family." At that, the man finally smiled. "That old story still matters to you?" Cheonwoo stepped forward. "It matters enough for me to kill you." The duel was vicious. The scarred man fought like someone who had survived by brutality rather than elegance. He had power, speed, and experience. Several times his blade came close to Cheonwoo's throat. Several times Cheonwoo escaped by the width of a breath. Then, at the exact moment the man overcommit, Cheonwoo cut across his wrist, drove the blade through his shoulder, and sent him crashing into the wall. The enemy commander laughed through blood. "Too late," he whispered. Cheonwoo frowned. Before the man could speak again, an explosion shook the far end of the estate. A second fire. No, a signal. Cheonwoo turned. Far beyond the main courtyard, a pillar of smoke rose into the night. The enemy had failed here, but somewhere else, another part of the plan had already begun. The scarred man coughed and smiled with broken teeth. "We only came to test you." Cheonwoo did not reply. He drew his sword back once and ended the man's life. Then he stood in the corridor, listening to the battle still raging outside. The final phase of the night ended before dawn. The invading force was shattered. The hidden cell operating inside the estate was annihilated. The main street of Luoyang lay littered with weapons, blood, and burned debris. The Jin family had survived the assault, yet victory felt strangely hollow, because Cheonwoo knew this was not the end. When the sun rose, he received the report that explained everything. Several captured documents had been recovered from the dead enemies. Among them was a shipment record, a route list, and one familiar phrase written in code. A phrase that made even Yuhayan go silent. The magatama. Cheonwoo read the word once, then again, and finally understood. Unit 10 had not come only to destroy the Jean family. They had come to find something inside it, something hidden deep enough that even the previous search had failed. The true objective had never changed. The war was larger than Luoyang, larger than a single cell, larger than a single family. Qianwu looked toward the distant horizon, where smoke still drifted above the city. The enemy had been driven back. The immediate threat was gone, but now he knew the shape of the greater shadow behind it. He sheathed his sword. Then he smiled, faint and cold. "Good," he murmured. "Now I know where to cut next." The word refused to leave his mind. Magatama. Jin Qianwu had heard it countless times during his previous life. Sometimes it appeared in intercepted messages. Sometimes in the final words of dying enemies. Sometimes in rumors whispered by frightened survivors. Yet nobody had ever explained what it truly was. Not even the people who died searching for it. The morning after the battle against Unit 10, the estate remained unnaturally quiet. Workers repaired damaged walls. Servants cleaned bloodstains from stone courtyards. Funeral preparations had already begun. Victory carried a price. It always did. Qianwu stood alone in a study examining the recovered documents. Maps, codes, lists of names. Most of it was useless. Then he found a sentence written in a different hand. Primary objective remains unchanged. Recover the Magatama at all costs. Not destroy, not steal wealth, not assassinate. Recover. The wording bothered him. Someone believed the artifact already belonged to them. Someone believed the Jean family had taken it, which raised a more important question. How had the Jean family obtained it in the first place? A knock sounded. Yu Haiyan entered carrying another stack of reports. "We finished interrogating the remaining prisoners. Anything useful?" The manager hesitated. "Only one thing." Qianwu looked up. They all believed the Magatama was hidden somewhere inside the estate. Silence followed. Then Qianwu slowly nodded. That matched everything he knew. The enemy had infiltrated the family for decades. They had spent enormous resources. They had sacrificed entire cells. No organization would do that for ordinary treasure. The Magatama was worth more than gold. Far more. By afternoon he stood before the ancestral archives. The building was older than any other structure in the estate. Many family heads had expanded it over the centuries. Most people avoided it. Too many records, too much dust, too little excitement. For Qianwu it felt different. History hid answers, and answers won wars. The old archivist nearly fainted when he requested access to restricted documents. You wish to review records from 200 years ago?" "Yes." "Why?" "Curiosity." The old man looked unconvinced. Fortunately, rank ended arguments. Within minutes, ancient ledgers, journals, and travel logs covered an entire table. Qianwu began reading. Hours passed, then more. Most records proved useless. Trade agreements, marriage arrangements, property disputes, nothing connected to the artifact. Just as he considered leaving, a single name caught his eye. Jin Musong, a family head from nearly 2 centuries earlier. The journal described an expedition beyond the western frontier. Officially, it had been a trade mission. Unofficially, it looked like something else entirely. The expedition had included martial artists, scholars, cartographers, and several men whose occupations were never recorded. The journey lasted nearly 2 years. When Jin Musong returned, he brought an object described only as the heavenly tear. Qianwu's eyes narrowed. The journal continued. 3 months after returning, 4 separate assassination attempts targeted the family. A year later, an unknown organization launched a coordinated attack against multiple Jin family caravans. The pattern looked familiar. Too familiar. Someone had been searching for the artifact long before Shadow Kill Squad existed. Or perhaps Shadow Kill Squad had existed far longer than anyone realized. The discovery changed everything. The Magatama was not the cause of a recent conflict. It was the center of a war that had lasted generations. That night, Qianwu climbed to the roof of the archive building. The city stretched beneath him, calm, peaceful, unaware. Zhang Chuhyung eventually found him there. "I knew you'd be somewhere gloomy." Qianwu ignored the comment. The large man sat beside him. For several moments, neither spoke. Finally, Zhang Chuhyung asked, "What's bothering you?" "The enemy. Again. Always." The warrior sighed dramatically. "Can I at least know why?" Qianwu considered the question, then answered honestly, "Because I think we've been fighting the wrong war." That finally caught his attention. "What does that mean?" "It means Unit 10 wasn't the real threat." The words lingered between them. Even saying them aloud felt dangerous. Unit 10 had nearly destroyed the family, yet they had merely been a weapon. Someone else had forged it. Someone else had aimed it. Someone else had given the orders. For the first time, Qianwu understood how large the shadow truly was. The following week brought another breakthrough. One of the recovered codes matched a ledger discovered in the archives. The connection revealed a hidden chain of communication. Names began appearing. Merchants, officials, officials, clan leaders, people spread across multiple provinces. Some were dead, some were powerful, all were connected. The network stretched far beyond Luoyang. Yu Haiyan stared at the compiled list in disbelief. This isn't an organization. No, Qianwu agreed. It's a system. That realization frightened him more than any assassin. Systems survived failure. Systems adapted. Destroying one branch accomplished little. To end the threat permanently, he would need to reach the core. Days later, another discovery arrived. A hidden compartment inside the archive. The mechanism had been concealed behind a carved panel. Even knowing where to look, opening it proved difficult. Inside lay only 3 objects: a sealed letter, an old map, a black stone pendant. The pendant instantly drew his attention. Smooth, dark, cold. Even after centuries, the shape resembled descriptions found in several journals. Not the magatama itself, but something connected to it. His pulse quickened. At last, a real clue. The sealed letter proved even more valuable. It had been written by Jin Musong himself. The handwriting was faded but readable. The contents changed everything. The artifact had never belonged to the Jin family. It had been entrusted to them, guarded, hidden, protected. The letter contained a warning. If the artifact were ever reclaimed by the wrong hands, countless people would die. No explanation followed. No details. Only the warning. Yet the urgency behind the words felt genuine. Qianwu read the letter 3 times, then a 4th. Each reading produced more questions and fewer answers. For several days he barely slept. The puzzle consumed him. Every clue pointed toward the same conclusion. Shadow Kill Squad was not hunting wealth. They were hunting inheritance. Something ancient, something powerful, something capable of motivating generations of conflict. Then the crisis arrived. Not from the enemy, from within. A messenger reached Luoyang shortly before dawn. The rider collapsed from exhaustion. His horse nearly died beneath him. The message he carried came from one of the family's distant branches. An entire caravan had vanished. No survivors, no witnesses, no bodies, only burned wagons. Qianwu read the report silently, then placed it beside the others. The pattern had returned. The wider network was moving. The moment he finished speaking with the messenger, another report arrived. Then another. A warehouse destroyed. Courier missing. A merchant contact murdered. Different locations. Same methods. The enemy was retaliating. Not openly. Not dramatically. Methodically. Like a predator testing prey. Zhang Chuhyang slammed a fist into the table. Let's just find them and kill them. Qianwu almost smiled. A simple solution. An impossible one. Not yet. Because now he finally understood the truth. The men who had attacked Luoyang. The spies. The assassins. Even Unit 10. None of them stood at the top. Someone else remained hidden. Someone powerful enough to command entire organizations. Someone patient enough to manipulate events across generations. Someone who still believed the magatama would eventually become theirs. That person had ordered the destruction of his family in the previous life. That person still lived. And for the first time since returning to the past, Qianwu possessed a path leading directly toward them. He stood before the window as dawn illuminated the city. The repaired rooftops, the rebuilt walls, the people beginning another ordinary day. Everything seemed peaceful, yet he could feel the storm gathering beyond the horizon. The war for Luoyang was over. The war for the magatama had only just begun. Qianwu closed his eyes, then opened them again. Cold determination replaced uncertainty. Unit 10 was dead. The hidden cells were broken. The first battlefield belonged to him. Now he would begin hunting the people responsible for the entire conspiracy. Not their servants, not their soldiers, not their agents, the masters. And when he found them, he would make them regret every drop of blood they had spilled. For 2 lifetimes he had followed shadows. Now the shadows finally had names. The first name on the list died before sunset. Not by Qianwu's hand, not by a sword. Fear killed him. The merchant collapsed while attempting to flee Luoyang. Witnesses claimed he looked over his shoulder repeatedly, as if someone invisible was following him. By the time guards reached him, blood leaked from his mouth and his heart had already stopped. When the report arrived, Jin Qianwu read it twice. Then he placed it beside the growing stack of documents. The enemy was cleaning its own house. That meant he was getting close. The weeks following the discovery of the Magatama network became a silent war. There were no grand battles, no burning districts, no armies, only disappearances, assassinations, interrogations, and information. Every day another piece of the puzzle emerged. A caravan master secretly financing Shadow Kill Squad. A provincial official accepting coded messages. A merchant guild laundering money through hidden accounts. Individually they seemed unrelated. Together they formed a machine that had operated for generations. Yu Haiyan stared at the evidence covering an entire wall. I still don't understand how something this large remained hidden. Qianwu looked at the names. Because people only see what they expect to see. Most men expected enemies to arrive 5 carrying swords. Few noticed enemies carrying ledgers. The first target was a financier named Seo Minguk. For 20 years, he had quietly moved resources across multiple provinces. No one suspected him. His reputation was spotless. His business successful. His family respected. The perfect disguise. Unfortunately for him, Cheonwoo already knew where to look. The operation began at midnight. 3 teams entered his estate simultaneously. One seized documents. One captured servants. One blocked escape routes. Seo Minguk attempted to flee through a hidden tunnel. Jang Chu-hyung dragged him back by the ankle. The man screamed all the way to the interrogation room. 3 days later, he confessed, not because of torture, because he realized his masters had already abandoned him. The confession revealed 5 more names, then 9, then 14. The hunt accelerated. By midsummer, Shadow Kill Squad had lost dozens of safe houses. Entire communication routes vanished. Couriers disappeared. Supply chains collapsed. For the first time in decades, the organization was being forced backward. Cheonwoo felt no satisfaction. Not yet. Every victory revealed another layer, another hidden supporter, another invisible hand. The deeper he dug, the older the conspiracy appeared. One evening, a coded letter arrived from a captured courier. Unlike previous messages, this one contained a symbol Cheonwoo had never seen before, a black circle. Inside it, a single silver line. The moment he showed it to the surviving informants, their faces turned pale. That reaction alone made the symbol valuable. What is it? Cheonwoo asked. No one answered. Jang Chu-hyung slammed a fist into the table. The wood cracked. Answer him. Finally, one prisoner spoke. The council. The room fell silent. Even saying the name seemed difficult. According to the prisoner, Shadow Kill Squad was merely a weapon. The true authority belonged to a hidden leadership known only as the council. No one knew how many members existed. No one knew their real identities. Only that every major operation eventually traced back to them. Cheonwoo remained silent for several moments. Then he smiled. For the first time, he had a target. Not an army. Not a network. A leadership. Something he could destroy. The following months became the most dangerous period of his second life. The council finally reacted. Assassins appeared repeatedly. Some attacked openly. Others used poison. Twice arrows struck his room after midnight. Once an entire bridge collapsed while he was crossing it. Only preparation and caution kept him alive. Even then, the losses mounted. Several trusted guards died. A messenger vanished. One of the family's distant allies was found murdered. The enemy had decided to strike back hard. Jang Chu-hyung became impossible to shake. The giant practically slept outside Cheonwoo's door. You're becoming annoying, Cheonwoo told him. Good. I can protect myself. I know. Then why are you still here? Jang Chu-hyung shrugged. Because if something happens to you, everyone will blame me. The answer was ridiculous, which meant it was probably sincere. Autumn arrived. Leaves turned gold. The war continued. Then came the breakthrough. A captured accountant. An insignificant man. Forgettable. Ordinary. Exactly the kind of person nobody noticed. Yet he carried records. Thousands of transactions. Bribes. Payments. Hidden accounts. Most importantly, locations. For 3 nights, Cheonwoo studied the documents. By dawn on the 4th day, he finally found it. The Central Archive. A hidden repository used by the council. The place where generations of records had been gathered. The heart of the machine. Destroy it and decades of secrecy would vanish. The operation required everything they had. 200 fighters, trusted scouts, veteran escorts. Even Yu Haiyan personally supervised logistics. No one slept much before departure. Everyone understood the importance. Failure would allow the council to disappear again. Success would expose them. The journey lasted 4 days. The archive was hidden deep in the mountains, protected by terrain more than walls. The defenders believed themselves safe. They were wrong. Cheonwoo launched the assault before sunrise. The first arrows struck the watchtowers. The second wave shattered the gates. Then the fighting began. Unlike previous enemies, these defenders were trained, disciplined, fanatical. They fought without fear, without hesitation, without retreat. The battle lasted nearly 6 hours. Blood-covered stone paths. Bodies filled courtyards. Twice the attackers were forced back. Twice they advanced again. At the center of the complex stood a stone hall. The archive, the objective. Cheonwoo reached it shortly before noon. Inside waited the strongest defender he had faced since returning to the past. An elderly swordsman, gray-haired, calm, terrifying. The old man looked at him with strange curiosity. So you're the one causing all this trouble, and you're standing in my way. The swordsman laughed softly. You remind me of someone. Cheonwoo did not answer. The duel began. The old man was fast, far faster than his age suggested. Every movement carried decades of experience. 3 times their blades collided. 3 times sparks flew. The 4th exchange nearly killed Cheonwoo. Only a desperate step backward saved him. For the first time in months, genuine danger filled the air. The old man smiled. Good. Cheon-woo hated that smile. It belonged to someone enjoying the fight. The duel continued, minute after minute, strike after strike. Finally, experience met determination. The old man made a mistake. Tiny, almost invisible. Enough. Cheon-woo's blade slipped past the defense and pierced his chest. Silence followed. The old swordsman looked down, then back up. Strangely, he seemed relieved. "You've forced them into the light," he whispered. "What?" Blood touched his lips. "The council will never forgive this." Then he died. The words lingered. Cheon-woo stared at the body. Something about that final warning felt important. Yet there was no time to think. The archive had to be searched. Hundreds of documents filled the hall. Records, orders, names, evidence, years of evidence. Yu Hyan nearly stopped breathing when he saw the volume. This can destroy entire families. It will. Cheon-woo looked toward the shelves, toward the secrets hidden there, toward the truth he had spent 2 lifetimes pursuing. For the first time, the council had suffered a real wound. Their network was broken, their archive captured, their agents exposed. Yet as the sun set beyond the mountains, Cheon-woo felt no victory, only anticipation, because every road now pointed toward the same destination. The council, the true masters behind Shadow Kill Squad, the people responsible for the destruction of his family, the people who still believed themselves untouchable. He closed the final ledger, then rose to his feet. "The shadows are falling," he said quietly. No one in the hall answered. They didn't need to. Everyone understood. The next war would not be against servants, or assassins, or hidden cells. The next war would be against the architects themselves. And for the first time since his return, they could no longer hide. The first member of the council died at dawn, not because Jin Cheon-woo found him, because the man attempted to erase his own tracks and failed. The archive captured in the mountains had changed everything. Names, payments, meetings, generations of secrets. For the first time, the council was no longer invisible. They could bleed, and they knew it. Across the provinces, panic spread through hidden networks that had operated safely for decades. Messages moved constantly. Couriers rode day and night. Safe houses were abandoned. Documents were burned. Men who had once considered themselves untouchable suddenly discovered fear. Cheon-woo welcomed that fear. For 2 lifetimes, he had carried it himself. Now it belonged to his enemies. The hunt began immediately. The archive revealed 6 senior council members operating under false identities. None used their real names. None appeared in public records. Each controlled part of the machine that had directed Shadow Kill Squad for generations. One managed finances. One controlled intelligence. One coordinated assassinations. One recruited infiltrators. One maintained political influence. And one sat above them all. The final name had been removed from nearly every document. Only traces remained. A shadow behind shadows. The man who had ordered the destruction of the Jin family. The man Cheon-woo had searched for across 2 lives. The man he intended to kill. The first months of the campaign felt less like war and more like execution. Council supporters disappeared one after another. Secret accounts were seized. Smuggling routes collapsed. Entire branches of the network vanished. This time there was no hesitation, no mercy. Cheon-woo had already seen what mercy bought him in his previous life. Graves, nothing more. Even Jang Chu-hyung noticed the change. One evening, after another successful operation, the giant warrior sat across from him in silence. Finally he asked, "Do you still enjoy anything?" Cheon-woo looked up. "What? Food, wine, sleep, anything." The question lingered. He did not answer immediately, because he wasn't sure. For years his life had revolved around one goal: revenge, survival, justice, call it whatever name you wanted. The destination remained the same: the destruction of those responsible. Before he could answer, another report arrived. A council member had been located. The hunt resumed. 3 days later they struck. The target was hiding inside a fortified estate protected by mercenaries and private guards. The defenses looked impressive, until they met people who had spent months dismantling Shadow Kill Squad. The battle ended before midnight. The guards surrendered. The mercenaries fled. The council member tried to bargain. Cheon-woo listened patiently, then refused. The man died shortly afterward, not because he was important, because he was guilty. Word spread. The council began breaking apart. Some members attempted escape. Others turned against each other. A few desperately tried to negotiate. All failed. The machine that had once seemed immortal was collapsing under its own weight. Yet Cheon-woo remained unsatisfied, because one name still remained: the leader, the architect, the man hidden behind decades of bloodshed. The final clue came from an unexpected source: an old ledger, almost overlooked, buried beneath hundreds of irrelevant records. Inside was a sequence of payments stretching back more than 30 years. Every major operation connected to one location: a remote mountain residence, officially abandoned, unofficially impossible to approach. The moment Cheon-woo saw the coordinates, he knew the end was near. Preparation took 2 weeks, not because he lacked men, because he refused to fail. Too much depended on this. Too many dead deserved answers. The journey into the mountains began beneath heavy rain. Only a small group accompanied him. Jang Chuhyung, Yu Hyan, several trusted veterans. No one complained. No one hesitated. They all understood what this mission meant. The road grew narrower with every mile. The weather worsened. Wind howled through the cliffs. Clouds swallowed the sky. At sunset on the fourth day they saw it. The residence, stone walls, ancient towers, hidden among mountains like a forgotten fortress. The final refuge of the council. Cheon-woo stared at it for a long time, not because it frightened him, because he had imagined this moment for years. In another life he had dreamed of it. Now it was real. The assault began before dawn. No speeches, no declarations, only action. Arrows darkened the sky. Explosives shattered gates. Veterans stormed the outer wall. The defenders fought fiercely. They knew surrender would not save them. They fought because they had no other choice. The battle raged through courtyards and corridors. Steel rang. Blood flowed. Men screamed. The fortress slowly fell, room by room, hall by hall, until only the central tower remained. Cheon-woo entered first. The tower was strangely quiet, almost peaceful. At the top waited a single man. Gray robes, silver hair, calm eyes, no guards, no weapons visible, just an old man sitting beside a table. The sight angered Cheon-woo more than any battlefield. Too ordinary, too human. This man had destroyed countless lives, yet he looked like a harmless scholar. So, the old man said. His voice was calm. You finally arrived. Cheon-woo's grip tightened around his sword. You know who I am, of course. The old man smiled faintly. I've known for quite some time. The answer chilled the room. For a moment neither moved. Then Cheon-woo asked the question he had carried for years. Why? The old man tilted his head. Why what? Why my family? The smile disappeared. The Jin family possessed something that was never theirs. The Magatama. Yes. The old man's voice remained steady. As long as your family protected it, conflict was inevitable. Cheon-woo felt anger rising. Not because of the answer, because of how little regret accompanied it. Thousands dead. Entire families destroyed. Decades of suffering. And this man spoke about it like a business transaction. You murdered innocent people. I made necessary decisions. That sentence ended the conversation. The old man stood. From beneath the table he drew a sword. Not quickly, not dramatically, simply as someone preparing for an unavoidable task. The duel began. Unlike previous opponents, the council leader fought with extraordinary precision. No wasted motion, no unnecessary aggression. Every strike carried purpose. Every defense carried experience. Cheon-woo immediately understood. This was not a politician. This was a survivor. A man who had climbed over corpses to reach power. Their blades collided again and again. Minutes passed. Neither gained advantage. The old man remained calm. Cheon-woo remained relentless. The tower echoed with steel. Outside, the battle continued. Inside, nothing existed except the duel. Then memory intervened. A movement, a stance, a subtle shift of weight. Cheon-woo recognized it. Not from this life, from the previous one. Years ago, during the final destruction of the Jin family, he had seen the same movement, the same sword style, the same rhythm. Understanding struck instantly. You were there. The old man's eyes narrowed. You watched. Silence. Then came confirmation. A tiny smile. Enough. Rage exploded through Cheon-woo. Not blind rage, focused rage. The kind forged over 2 lifetimes. The next exchange shattered the stalemate. He drove forward. One strike, then another. The old man retreated for the first time. Cheon-woo followed relentlessly. Years of grief, years of regret, years of hatred. Every emotion became steel. The final blow came without warning. The council leader attempted to counter. Too slow. Cheon-woo's blade passed through his defense and entered his chest. Silence followed. The old man staggered, looked down, then back up. For the first time, uncertainty appeared in his eyes. You changed fate, he whispered. Yes. Blood touched his lips. The old man laughed weakly, then collapsed dead. Just like that, the architect of the conspiracy, the man responsible for countless tragedies, gone. For several moments, Cheon-woo simply stood there, waiting, expecting something. Relief, satisfaction, peace. Instead, he felt only silence. The revenge he had carried for 2 lifetimes was complete. Yet the dead remained dead. His previous life remained lost. Nothing could change that. Jang Chuhyung eventually entered the tower. The giant stopped beside him. Neither spoke. The body on the floor required no explanation. After a long silence, Jang Chuhyung finally asked, "Is it over?" Cheon-woo looked through the broken window. The fortress burned below. The council was dead. Shadow Kill Squad was broken. The people responsible had paid the price. Slowly he nodded. The revenge is over. For the first time in many years, the future stood before him. Unknown, uncertain, and entirely his own. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, Jin Cheon-woo woke without thinking about revenge. The realization felt strange. For years, every decision had pointed toward a single destination. Every sacrifice sacrifice, every battle, every sleepless night. Now the destination was behind him. The council was gone. Shadow Kill Squad was shattered. The man responsible for the destruction of his family was dead. Yet when morning sunlight entered his room, the world had not changed. Servants still carried water through the courtyards. Merchants still argued over prices. Guards still changed shifts at the gates. Life continued. Cheon-woo sat quietly for a long time. He had spent so much effort reaching the end that he had never truly considered what came after. A knock sounded. Jang Chu-hyung entered without waiting for permission. As usual, you look confused. I'm thinking, that's dangerous. Cheon-woo laughed. A real laugh, perhaps the first genuine one in years. Jang Chu-hyung stared at him suspiciously. Now I'm worried. You should be. Good. Everything feels normal again. The giant warrior left as abruptly as he had arrived. The brief conversation lingered. Normal. The word sounded almost foreign. Several weeks passed. The provinces slowly recovered from the collapse of the council. Former allies rushed to distance themselves from the conspiracy. Officials launched investigations. Merchant guilds reorganized leadership. Power shifted everywhere. The world was changing. Cheon-woo spent most of his time helping stabilize the Jin family. Warehouses were rebuilt. Trade routes reopened. Old alliances were restored. For the first time since his return, his efforts focused on construction rather than destruction. It should have felt satisfying. Instead, a question remained unanswered. The magatama, the object at the center of everything. The reason generations had killed and died. The reason the council had targeted his family. The reason fate itself seemed to have twisted around the Jin bloodline. One evening, he returned to the ancestral archive, the same building where his search had truly begun. Dust floated through the fading sunlight. Rows of ancient records stood silent, waiting. Cheon-woo carried the black pendant discovered months earlier. The object connected somehow to the artifact. He was certain of it. The problem was understanding how. Hours passed. Nothing. Then he found it. A reference hidden inside an old travel journal. Not a description. A location. A mountain shrine abandoned centuries ago. The final clue. 3 days later, he departed. Only a small group accompanied him. Jang Chu-hyung refused to stay behind. Yu Hyan claimed someone needed to prevent both of them from making terrible decisions. The journey took nearly a week. The shrine stood deep within remote mountains untouched by war. Ancient stone steps climbed through mist and old pine trees. Silence dominated the landscape, not the silence of abandonment, the silence of waiting. At the summit stood a weathered temple. No guards, no traps, no signs of life. Cheon-woo entered first. The interior was dark. A single stone altar occupied the center. Nothing more. At first glance, the room appeared empty. Then the black pendant reacted. Faint vibration, barely noticeable. Cheon-woo approached the altar. At its base, he discovered a narrow opening. The pendant fit perfectly. The moment it settled into place, hidden mechanisms awakened. Stone shifted. Dust fell. A section of the altar slowly opened. Inside rested a small object wrapped in faded cloth. The magatama. For several moments, nobody moved. After everything that had happened, the artifact looked surprisingly ordinary. A curved stone ornament no larger than a man's palm. Dark, smooth, ancient. Yet the moment Cheon-woo touched it, something changed. Not in the room. Inside himself. Memories, fragments, images. A flood of impressions rushed through his mind. He saw distant centuries, unknown faces, wars long forgotten, families protecting the artifact, others hunting it, generation after generation repeating the same cycle. Then he understood. The magatama was never a weapon, never a treasure, never a source of power. It was a record, a legacy, a vessel preserving knowledge entrusted to chosen guardians. The council had spent centuries pursuing it because they believed it concealed a path to absolute authority. They had misunderstood. The artifact's true value lay in memory, truth, history, everything they had tried to erase. The revelation left him silent. Jang Chu-hyung blinked. Well, Cheon-woo looked down at the artifact, then smiled. It wasn't worth all the blood. The answer confused everyone, but it felt right. People had slaughtered one another for generations over an illusion. The artifact contained wisdom, not domination, responsibility, not supremacy. The council had destroyed itself chasing a lie. For the first time, Cheon-woo felt pity for them. Only a little. The journey home felt lighter. When they returned to Luoyang, autumn had arrived. Golden leaves covered the roads. Children played in markets. Travelers filled the inns. The city felt alive. The estate felt alive. Most importantly, the people he loved remained alive. His mother greeted him in the courtyard, a sight that still felt miraculous. In his previous life, she had died in blood and fire. Now she smiled and asked whether he had eaten properly during the journey. The ordinary concern nearly overwhelmed him. His father remained equally unchanged, proud, demanding, impossible to impress. Yet when they spoke privately, the older man studied him for a long moment. You've changed. Cheon-woo smiled faintly. I know. His father nodded. Good. No further explanation followed. None was needed. That evening a celebration filled the estate. Not for victory, not for revenge, simply because the family remained together. Lanterns illuminated every courtyard. Music echoed through the halls. Laughter drifted across the gardens. 4 years Cheon-woo had imagined this scene. Back then it felt impossible. Now it was real. Yu Hyan spent most of the evening attempting to prevent drunken merchants from embarrassing themselves. Jang Choo-hyung failed spectacularly at moderation and nearly started a wrestling match with 3 guards. Everything felt wonderfully ordinary. Near midnight Cheon-woo slipped away from the festivities. He climbed the same pavilion where, long ago, he had sworn to change the future. The city stretched beneath him, bright, peaceful, alive. The wind carried distant laughter. For a while he simply listened. Then footsteps approached. Jang Choo-hyung appeared carrying 2 cups. You always disappear during important moments. I needed air. You needed thinking time. That too. The giant handed him a cup. Neither spoke immediately. Eventually Jang Choo-hyung asked the question nobody else dared to ask. Do you regret it? Cheon-woo understood instantly. The battles, the deaths, the revenge, everything. He considered the answer carefully. No, because regret belonged to the man from the previous life. The man who had failed. The man who had watched his family die. That man no longer existed. This life belonged to someone else. Someone given another chance. Someone who had finally used it. The moon hung high above the city. For the first time since his return, Cheon-woo allowed himself to think beyond tomorrow. There would be new challenges, new rivals, new dangers. Such things never disappeared completely, but they would be faced together. Not alone. Not as a broken survivor wandering through ashes. As a son of the Jean family. As part of a future worth protecting. When the celebration finally ended, he remained on the pavilion a little longer. The magatama rested beside him, silent, his purpose fulfilled. The cycle of blood surrounding it had ended. The council was gone. Shadow Kill Squad was gone. The future remained unwritten. Cheon-woo looked toward the horizon. In another life, he had spent every waking moment staring backward. A loss, a failure, a ghost. Now he looked forward, and for the first time in 2 lifetimes, he smiled without bitterness. Dawn slowly appeared beyond the distant mountains. Golden light spread across Luoyang, across the rebuilt roads, across the restored estate, across the family that still lived. A new day began, not because fate demanded it, not because revenge required it, but because life continued, and this time Jean Cheon-woo intended to live it.